Hi, and welcome to our TA Live webinar. My name is Candace McIntyre, and I am a Deaf Education and Training Specialist with the Resource Materials and Technology Center for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. So as we reviewed in our first TA Live webinar, throughout the year, we'll be discussing each of the 10 essential principles of the Optimizing Outcomes Guidelines from the National Association of State Directors of Special Education, or NASD, N-A-S-D-S-E. And following that will be a panel of experts who will share their experiences based on each of the principles. We will also be using a live binder throughout the year to keep all the resources we discuss in one place. The resources discussed during the webinars, as well as the slide deck, can be found in the live binder. All right, so last month, we discussed the first essential principle from the Optimizing Outcomes Guidelines of each student is unique. This month, we'll be discussing the second principle, high expectations drive educational programming and future employment opportunities. So let's dig in. So I love this picture that reads, "My teacher thought I was smarter than I was, so I was." There is a great body of research on the need for high expectations for all students. And this is no different for students who are deaf and hard of hearing. Many people, including professionals in the field of deaf education, sometimes rely on old and outdated research for establishing expectations for their students. One example is the assertion that students who are deaf and hard of hearing graduate on a 3rd and 4th grade reading level, right? So we've heard this statistic before. Using this data as justification to set low expectations for any student is unacceptable. Students who are deaf and hard of hearing can learn to read at a level comparable with their same grade peers. If they present with a gap in this area, it is the job, the responsibility, and the duty of the IEP team to come up with a plan to close that achievement gap. So NASD said it best, children who are deaf and hard of hearing, when provided access to appropriate language, learning, and academic opportunities designed to enhance their abilities, not their disabilities, can and do attain high levels of achievement that increase their later employment opportunities. So let's talk a little bit about presumed competence and least dangerous assumption. Anne Donnellan introduced the term least dangerous assumption in 1984. The bottom line is we have to do right by the child. But what is right at a fundamental level? As educators, we have no control over what is happening outside of the classrooms. When we're unsure of a student's abilities or skills, it's imperative that we presume competence. Presumed competence means acting in a way that, if we're wrong, has the least dangerous effect on the student. So I love what Cheryl Jorgensen said. If the student does not learn, the quality of instruction should be questioned before the student's ability to learn. We need to presume competence in that all children can learn. Albert Einstein said, "The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results." So if what we're doing isn't working, then we need to change it. So is what we're doing actually working? Remember, the goal for every teacher is to produce citizens ready to enter the world of post-secondary education or employment. So let's look at some data to see if what we're doing is actually working. So research has shown that 85% of children who entered into school with delayed language skills did not catch up by the end of the 2nd grade. An estimated 60% of students who are DHH who enroll in post-secondary settings don't graduate. And only 48% of people who are deaf and hard of hearing are employed, compared to 72% of hearing people. So what causes these gaps? right? We know these gaps. We've seen these statistics before, but what's the cause? The National Deaf Center on Post-Secondary Outcomes, or NDC, conducted a root cause analysis of current data and existing literature and identified 4 underlying causes that affect post-secondary outcomes for people who are deaf and hard of hearing. So the first is limited access to language and communication. So we've seen this many times, right? Many of our students, upon entering into school for the first time, have had limited appropriate access to language. The second is reduced social opportunities. We also know that many of our students often do not have access to peers or adults who are DHH as well. The third is negative attitudes and biases. We know that sometimes being deaf can be looked down upon. The fourth is lack of qualified and experienced professionals. We are in a critical shortage of qualified and experienced providers who are educated in the field of deaf education. Again, none of this is surprising. If you've been in deaf education, you know these causes are true, and I'm sure you can all share personal experiences. The question is, how do we close these gaps? Remember, if what we're doing isn't working, we need to change it. NDC also conducted a review of the literature on practices that address the 4 root causes of these gaps and identified 5 key impact areas that can be addressed to close the gaps. So the 5 key impact areas are designing accessible environments, promoting high expectations for students or for success, collecting and using data for decision making, leveraging community resources, and developing collaborative and integrated systems. If you want to read more about each of these 5 impact areas, you can go to NDC's website to review the research and receive suggestions on how to close these gaps. Our panel of experts are going to review how they have used these impact areas, particularly having high expectations, to close those gaps and see success for their students. So in the end, you get what you expect. There must be an expectation that most students who are DHH, including those who are deaf with additional disabilities, can achieve the same or higher levels than their peers. It's our responsibility to change the landscape of performance, and it starts with setting high expectations. All right, so now we will have our lovely panel of experts come on. They'll present case studies of students. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel of experts. We have Kori Gedris from Putnam County. She's a teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing and also the alternate assessment coordinator for her county. We also have Allyson, Dudich, and Jenna, Roth. And they're from Broward County and are both teachers of the deaf and hard of hearing and transition specialists for their county. So Kori will present her case study first, followed by Allyson and Jenna. So I'm going to go ahead and spotlight Kori. Kori, you want to join us? Take off your, or turn on your video.
Are we good?
Yes, ma'am. All right, so I just spotlighted you as well.
Okay, now we. Excellent. Thank you so much. So if you want to go to my case study 1 page.
Yeah.
Excellent. So this young man is James. His primary exceptionality, so he entered our program at age 3 in the ESE pre-K program with developmental delays and language impairments, the need for occupational therapy and physical therapy. At 3.5, we got official diagnosis of a sensorineural hearing loss. It was suspected younger, but unfortunately, due to some lack of follow-through with home issues, He had a little bit of a delay in diagnosis. When they had a psychological report done when he was almost 6 years old through a doctor in Gainesville, the report noted that he demonstrated little to no understanding of symbolic language, that his visual reception skills were approximately 17 months. His expressive language skills were approximately 8 months. His gross motor skills were 17 months, and his fine motor skills were 18 months. And his gross and fine motor skills were his strengths at that time. Okay. He began medication for ADHD between 5 and 6 years old. The parents suspected there was some need for some help there. Around that same time also, he began to seek interaction and communication as a means to get something. So he would, at that age, come over to me, take my hand, and take me to the paint center and hand me an apron. So he was beginning to figure out that he could get what he wanted between 5 and 6 years old. Around that time also, the father gained custody and did some genetic testing, and he was diagnosed with Coffin-Lowry syndrome. And so that's a syndrome that if you do some research, which of course I immediately did, it is characterized by facial cranial anomalies, some global delays. It's often characterized with an intellectual delay, sensory disorder, things of that nature. He was fitted with bilateral behind the ear hearing aids between 4 and 6. He never wore them. We tried, the parents sent them to school. He would take them and chuck them. He thought it was a game. He didn't like them. Around 6 years old, he was fitted with a band-mounted bone conduction hearing aid. That also was worn inconsistently. He would take it, he would throw it, he would stomp on it, he would try to break it. We tried at least in the classroom, so they would put it on him on the bus. Well, of course, it almost went out the window a few different times. So in the fall of 2019, we did a communication matrix. He entered our environmental communication training program, and we tried to get some communication out of this kiddo. And you can see his communication matrix there above his cute little picture from when he was, I think he was 4 in that picture. And you can see that he does not have, he still does not have at that time symbolic communication. So he did not, I'm trying to pull it up here bigger on my screen. So he would request more of an object, but that was at very unconventional communication and conventional communication. He still was not using concrete symbols, and he has no concept of abstract symbols. So if you showed him a cookie or a glass of milk, concrete, he can choose which one he wants. Abstract would be you show him a picture of a cookie or a picture of a glass of milk. He still doesn't get that that means something. Abstract is also American Sign Language. So if we were to sign milk or sign cookie, he doesn't understand those concepts. He's still at the concrete symbol level of requesting objects and making choices. So what do you think we could do with James? What are some possible services? What are some ideas that you may have?
So Kori, I just put in the chat box for everyone to answer those questions. So what are possible services the student may need? What more do you want to know about him? Who is going to monitor this? And who can you reach out to if you don't know? So we'll wait for some answers, and I can read those out to you, or do you want to read them out?
If you could read about them, that's great. I'm trying to get back on the internet, but my internet is not playing nice with me, so I'm using my phone. So it's hard to monitor all the levels.
I understand. Technological difficulties should be the slogan of 2020, right?
Very much so. And thank goodness for backup plans, because I was able to get on quickly with my phone. Even though it's not ideal, I can make it happen.
All right, so Tamberlyn asked, does he have any fine or gross motor issues that would make signing difficult?
Yes. So you can see it is at 5 to 6, is it 5.8 years old? His fine motor skills and gross motor skills were his strength, but they were at 17 and 16 months respectively. So while that was his strength, he's nearly 6, and he's functioning at a 17 to 18 month level with fine and gross motor skills. So yes, that is definitely a hindrance to learning sign language. But also remember, on the communication plan, he's not there when it comes to the abstract understanding of American Sign Language. He doesn't understand abstract concepts yet. On his environmental communication training, he is not yet to the abstract level of communication. So we did try sign language. We tried picture communications. We tried everything to elicit a response and to work on that communication training. And he, at this time, was not quite there yet. So, other questions or ideas?
That was a really good question, Tamberlyn. I don't see any questions in the chat right now.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next slide so you can talk about what you did.
Sure. So what's next? Look how big he's gotten. Isn't that crazy? I just took those pictures 2 weeks ago. He's currently in 4th grade. We are continuing the environmental classroom or communication training. He's been introduced to a PECS communication system, which is the picture communication system. He's still not there. We just did an updated communication matrix a couple of weeks ago. He has now some areas where he greets people, but only with prompting. He's still at the concrete level of communication. So he still needs actual items to choose from to make a decision or to make a choice. And if he doesn't see it, he doesn't ask for it. He does not have those abstract concepts. So we're not ready. We're still always trying sign language, but it's not a priority for him because he's not at that level yet. We're working hard with a picture communication system to try to get him to an abstract level of communication to understand that this picture means that thing that I want. So we're there. Curriculum decisions and assessment decisions, because of his intellectual disability and lack of progress, he has been put on access points, and he is taking the Florida alternate assessment. And we are doing a lot of concrete items to help teach him and help him make choices and understand his classroom and learning environment. So we're still working on it, but our big goal with him is communication, because without communication, you really are so stuck. And so we need to make that a priority for him to make sure he can make choices and tell us what he wants. And so that's our priority there.
Kori, I love that you're using the communication matrix to guide those decision making. If you have not heard of the communication matrix or don't know what it is, make sure you check it out. It is in the live binder. That resource is in the live binder. And it's really a phenomenal resource, especially for those kiddos who are deaf with additional disabilities. So what I love about all of this, though, Kori, is that this wasn't a kid that you're just like, he's not going to communicate ever, so we're just not going to do anything with him. You know, you had those high expectations. You expected that he was going to communicate. You expected he was going to succeed, and he is starting to. So that's the whole point, is that even kiddos who are deaf with additional disabilities can succeed.
Definitely. When he threw his toy at me and hit me in the eye, I knew he could make a choice. He did not want that toy. So we were not going to give up, and we're going to make some appropriate choices in language.
Perfect. All right. So while I'm going to have Kori go ahead and turn her video off, I'm going to remove her from Spotlight. Thank you, Kori, so much for that case study. So now we are going to introduce Jenna Roth and Allyson Dudich.
Okay, so I'll start. We did our case study on Victor. He came to us, in kindergarten with a primary exceptionality of deaf and hard of hearing, with secondary exceptionalities of language impaired and speech impaired. He passed newborn hearing screenings and wasn't diagnosed with a hearing loss until kindergarten during school screenings. He had a mild to moderate sensorineural loss in the right and a severe to profound loss in the left. Over time, it has really progressed, and currently he's moderate to severe in the right, and his left ear is profoundly deaf. He was fitted for bilateral hearing aids in first grade by the time that they got through all testing and meetings and ordering process. All through elementary school, academically, he was at or above grade level. All of his social skills with peers and adults were all age appropriate. He had no issues sharing, taking turns, anything with that aspect. Once he hit middle school, he tested above grade level academically. He was on a 9th and 10th grade reading level. However, he began exhibiting anger towards peers. He had multiple physical altercations. He was suspended. He was given detention all the time. When he hit 7th grade, his behaviors really began impacting his grades and his progress. And he continued with suspensions, and his grades he went from an A-B student to failing classes. 8th grade came and he began not turning in work. He was taking off his hearing aids, refusing to wear them. His altercations all continued. And at that time, he was sent to an alternative school for behavior throughout the school year. Whenever he would have altercations or instances, they would remove him from his school and put him into another setting to help try to improve and alleviate the behaviors.
All right, so I just put in the chat again, those same questions. What are possible services this student may need? What more do you want to know about this student? Who's going to monitor this? And who can you reach out to if you don't know? So we'll wait for some answers for that. And you want me to read them to y'all, ladies? Would that be helpful?
Sure.
Okay. Sherry asked, did he have a behavior intervention plan?
Am I off mute? Okay. He did have a behavior intervention plan at the time during middle school, but he was mostly in shutdown mode at that point and was not really responding to any type of interventions.
Tamberlyn asked, did he get services from a counselor for the deaf and hard of hearing or a DHH counselor themselves?
So at that time he did not, because he was always at his neighborhood school. So all that he was receiving was itinerant services at the time. He did not have access to a DHH counselor. There was a counselor at the school that he was supposed to be seeing as far as his behavior intervention plan, but it was not a DHH counselor. In our county, the only students that have access to the DHH counselor specifically are the students who are bused to the cluster sites.
Right, Allyson and Jenna are in Broward County, which is a larger district, so they have those cluster sites. Yeah, so Nancy asked, was there ever a deaf person or role model with him?
So in middle school, no. Not until the very end of middle school. I started working with him as his itinerant at the beginning of 8th grade. So that's when we started kind of pulling some interventions in. Okay. So I can just go forward with this one then. Okay. So those are the things that I basically started looking at, was looking at the big picture. His behaviors that everybody was seeing in the classroom, his teachers, were very different than the behaviors that I started seeing working with him on a one-on-one. So those behaviors were not being demonstrated to me. And that's when I realized that I need to start looking at a little bit more of the history, because his middle school teachers were not really looking at his past assessments from elementary school. They weren't really digging back into to see, you know, where he was and where he is now. So when I started looking at all of those, you know, assessments and started doing assessments myself, you know, I was finding that he was, you know, as an 8th grader, he was reading at an 11th, 12th grade reading level. So he was very advanced academically, and that was not being portrayed with his grades or in any of his classes. So once I was able to kind of start having a relationship with him and talking to him and listening to him, we realized that there was a lot of bullying going on, and it was related to his hearing loss, and kids were making fun of his hearing aids. There were not, I think there was maybe one other student at the school with hearing aids at that time, but it wasn't somebody that he had any type of connection with. And he was bored in classes. He was in regular classes, and he was not being academically challenged. So I pushed to have him tested for gifted at that time. And he didn't test gifted, but he was like 3 points away from the score that they need for, you know, for gifted. So we did end up bumping him up to all advanced level courses, and just changing the dynamic of the peers that he was around started to make a big difference, and him being challenged academically started to make a big difference. And as we moved through and started high school, I started putting him and pairing him up with other DHH kids from other schools. And I think for him, that was the key, because he just did not have any type of connection to his hearing loss, to his self-identity, to other students who were experiencing the same challenges and obstacles as him. So I think the first time that he was around a bunch of other DHH students was when we pulled them together for the ACT prep course that AIDB came down and did. And we brought all of our high school DHH students together. I believe he was a freshman at that time. And he left that class, and I think I got a text message from him about an hour later that said, "Miss Allyson, why didn't you tell me that there were other DHH students in all these other schools? And why didn't you tell me there was any hot DHH girls?" And I was like, okay, no, we're not matchmakers, but you know, okay. But I mean, that was like, it clicked for him that there was all of these other students just like him. And even at that ACT training, I think he shared phone numbers with other kids that were in the training, and he started, you know, talking to them on a regular basis. And then in high school, we started pushing clubs and sports and other activities, and we continued to, I then paired him up as he got older, 10th and 11th grade. I brought him in for small groups with some of the new incoming freshmen at his high school, and he just really took on that role as a mentor, and, you know, telling these younger students, like, it's okay, it's going to be okay, you know, like, I'm here, there's other students here, it's cool to wear your hearing aids, like, you have to have access in your classroom. And he just really kind of fell into that role, and it helped him with his own growth. And then we ended up putting, he went to the Explore Your Future program at NTID. and he spent a week on that campus. And just every time that he experienced something that connected him more to his own hearing loss and his own culture, he just continued to grow, and he became an amazing advocate for himself and other students. And we did refer him to a DHH counselor. We actually, we are lucky because we have a nonprofit down here that also serves the deaf and hard of hearing community, and they have DHH counselors there that I was able to refer him to one of those counselors who really started talking to him about, you know, identity and his hearing loss and all of that. So all of those things made a huge difference for him.
Y'all ready for me to move on to the next slide?
Sure.
And this is Victor right here.
Yes, that's him at Marley Matlin with a bunch of all of our other students from the other high schools.
We used our mini grant to go there 2 years ago.
We did.
Mini grant from what? Mini grant from what?
From FIDA.
So these are the outcomes that he was able to achieve. He had, obviously, he really moved through and accepted his hearing loss. He became an amazing advocate. He stayed in all honors and AP classes through high school. He joined the ROTC program, and he was involved in that for 4 years in high school. He was on the high school step team, the high school track team. He joined the Police Explorers program and put in over 375 hours with the Police Explorers. He graduated last year with a standard diploma. He is employed at the time. He was one of our presenters last year at the FEDHA conference, and he is college bound. He's looking into the aviation mechanic program, local, but he's also considering NTID or Gallaudet at this point as well. So these are some pictures of him in his Police Explorers and his ROTC uniform at school.
I love that so much. So I'm going to go ahead and play the little clip from Victor. So Allyson and Jenna got him to record himself where he answered a few questions. We're going to only play a snippet of it, but you can watch the whole video. That's also in the live binder. But we're going to play just a recording where he answers what would he wish that his teachers would know, or what does he want teachers now to know who have students who are deaf and hard of hearing. So I'm going to play a quick little snippet of that. Yes, definitely. Nancy said, get the Kleenex ready. She's not wrong.
If I was able to go back in time and tell my teachers one thing, I would definitely tell them, don't be so quick to dismiss a kid. You know, if they need help, if they need attention, if they need something repeated back to them, you know, a little help goes a long way. And so just for that little push from me being placed in honor classes, I stayed out of trouble, my grades went up, and I got to be the best version of myself that I truly did.
So again, that was just a little snippet of him, but he has a whole video that's only about 2.5 minutes long that you all can go and watch, and it's just so good. And he talks about his experiences basically from birth to where he is now, and just being, you know, the struggle of him, you know, not wanting to accept his hearing loss, and now struggle and accepting that he is deaf and hard of hearing. So it's a really cool video. So I encourage you all to watch it. All right. So now, thank you, Allyson and Jenna, so much for that case study. That was amazing. I love, Allyson, how you just noticed, like, okay, he was doing well, and then middle school hit and all went downhill. So, which we've seen so often with our kiddos, right? So I love that you noticed that, and you were like, let's test them for gifted. So, I mean, you know, so I love that, but that's having that high expectation for him, and having that high expectations for all the students, that just because they're deaf and hard of hearing doesn't mean that's what causes behaviors, right? But that was part of the cause because he was being picked on. And, the teachers didn't know that. And so having a teacher of the deaf come in alongside and be like, I think this is what might be going on, is really crucial. And having those high expectations for him to show that, even he said, that kept me out of trouble. Just putting those honors classes kept me out of trouble. So that was just, I love that.
Thank you, Kori Gedris, Allyson Dudich, and Jenna Roth for being our panel experts for this TA Live webinar. Your expertise and experience help truly show that having high expectations for students can help them succeed. Thank you for watching this TA Live webinar. RMTC-DHH is a Florida Department of Education, Bureau of Exceptional Education and Student Services discretionary project, and all of the services we provide are at no cost to Florida stakeholders. To continue our work, we must collect survey data to justify why our services are needed. If you could please complete our survey, we would greatly appreciate it. You can keep in touch with RMTC-DHH by following us on social media, and we have a Vimeo and YouTube channel with a plethora of videos of our presentations, our TA Live webinars, and some additional videos demonstrating working with students who are DHH. If you have any questions, please reach out to us at info@rmtcdhh.org.